So we've been demoing the game, like you said, and actually the response was overwhelmingly positive, almost scarily so. We're comparing this to back in the day when we used to do location tests in the arcades, and players would have this notebook that they could use to write comments about the game and feedback. And a lot of times, that was very critical because the people who were there were the hardest core of the players in Tekken. So compared to that, yeah, surprisingly good. But there were a few things we noticed, not necessarily from the verbal feedback that they gave, but watching them play the game. We noticed that one of the new mechanics this time around, the heat system, was something that they weren't fully grasping as quickly as we liked. So we thought we wanted to do something to kind of adjust the learning curve there, to make it so that they could pick it up much quicker. So there is that, we made some changes to that because of the feedback. The heat system, in case you're not familiar with it, the main theme of the game this time around is the aggressive fighting style of the players. So to kind of emphasize that, we added this new heat state. And what this is there's two methods that you can use to enter the state. And you can choose to do so by going directly into it using the heat burst, where you just push a button and instantly you're in the state. Or there's certain moves for each character that when you hit your opponent with them, it allows you to enter the state as well. Obviously, there's more advantage to hitting your opponent with the heat engager, is what the move's called, rather than going directly, because you get more time in the heat state that way. But previously, if you notice on the bottom, the health gauge, where the heat energy is, there used to be kind of like these chains representing almost these stocks. And so depending on if you had one or two, the things you could do were a little bit different. And it wasn't necessarily that straightforward to the players, so we wanted to streamline it. So we got rid of the heat energy in the meaning of the stocks and just has the gauge. So it's much more simplified, and you can also tell right away what you're able to do. And when you're in the heat state, there's also this kind of very cinematic sequence of attacks that each character is unique to each character, called the heat smash. And so it used to be that the command for this technique was different for each character, but we've also made that just one button to kind of simplify it across the roster. So those are some of the major changes we made as a result.
You mentioned the gaming mechanics.
That's an interesting question. It's quite a deep one. So we first need to kind of start off on the kind of basis of the philosophy there. So many people might not think this way, but if you look at fighting games, they're different when you think of defense and offense than other versus online games. So in other games, when you attack your opponent, most of the time the damage is done if they're in the space when you're attacking. But for fighting games, you can block attacks, right? So that can totally negate the damage of the attack, which is already makes it kind of skewed to defensive capabilities in that result. And when you're thinking of not just fighting games in general, but Tekken is a 3D fighting game. So in addition to blocking, you can also do sidestepping to evade your opponent's attacks, making it even more skewed towards defensive capabilities. So this new mechanic and the aggressive that we're talking about means that we just wanted to add a certain time that it's limited, obviously, in which a player can more easily open up their opponent and enjoy going on the fence, and to actually motivate players to be more offensive rather than turtling up or running away. Because it's actually quite fun when you actually go on the fence and try it out, and it's a lot more fun for spectators who are watching the game as well. So those were not just the players themselves, but people watching the game via live streams or esports or whatever is something we had to take into account as well.
Yeah,
There's actually a variety of reasons for the change. It is a major change in the history, as you mentioned. This is the first time we're actually starting off with console. And there were several reasons why we're doing this. One of the major ones, obviously, is just the state of the arcades worldwide. Previously, they were everywhere in the US, in Europe, Asia, etc. And then they started declining, right? But the speed of the decline in the West, the US and Europe, was much, much faster than that of Asia. So probably around Tekken 5, which was like 2005 or so, was when we started to see a noticeable difference there. And what happens as a result is when you started to not see arcades anymore in the West, but only in Asia, when we were doing an arcade-only release first and then jumped to console, that meant that the players in the West were having to wait for 2 years to get their hands on the game. So the start line for people in Asia and those outside of Asia was different, which wasn't a great thing for many reasons. And then another is just a simple internal matter that since then our company has changed the organization so that the arcade guys are actually a separate company from the console division, which Harada and I are in. So many kind of elements went into that decision, but the first two are probably the biggest ones.
So that means
キャラクターは16体だってね。
So we actually had the closed alpha test at several events. I think Combo Breaker was the one in a big tournament in the US. We had some in Europe and Asia as well, where limited people who were actually participating in the tournament that day could, for Tekken 7, could check out the game. So this is the first time we're actually opening up to a broader audience. And so for the closed network test, we have two different dates, as you mentioned. The first one will be on the PS5 only. And we'll have 16 characters available, which is a decent size. And that's just for this time. Obviously, when we release the game, it's going to have a lot more characters than that. But just for the test. There'll also be about 5 stages. And you'll be able to play all the new mechanics we're talking about, and the changes we made to the heat system as well will be reflected in that build. Not only that, the second date you mentioned is when we're going to be opening it up to crossplay between PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, S, and PC. So that'll be something the first time that people actually get a chance to check out not just the network play, but crossplay as well. So we're looking forward to that.
I think we're all looking forward to it. This is